Alaska begins as a world carved from quiet, silent glaciers stretching like frozen rivers of time, an endless tundra shimmering beneath pale northern light, and mountains rising like ancient guardians untouched by human memory. This is a land where footsteps vanish within seconds, where storms can erase entire landscapes, and where the earth feels closer to its primordial state than anywhere else on the planet. Perhaps that is why Alaska remains one of the least explored regions on Earth, an untouched vault where mysteries have all the room they need to hide. It's here, beneath layers of ice and permafrost, that archaeologists keep finding traces of cultures that simply shouldn't exist, evidence older than the last ice age, artifacts whose craftsmanship doesn't match any known indigenous lineage, and signs of settlements that appear in the record only to vanish without explanation. Each discovery disrupts the comfortable scientific timelines we rely on, rewriting chapters of human history with every frozen excavation. Modern science insists humanity migrated into the region in predictable, well-documented waves. Yet the relics buried in Alaska tell a different story, a story marked by abrupt beginnings, mysterious disappearances, and cultural signatures no textbook can explain. The deeper researchers dig into the ice, the more the land pushes back, revealing fragments that feel less like history and more like deliberate secrets. Something ancient lies preserved here, suspended in the cold. Something that challenges what we think we know about our past. And as we step into this untouched wilderness, one unsettling question rises from beneath the frozen ground: what vanished civilizations are waiting to be uncovered, and why were they forgotten? According to the official timeline, the story of human presence in Alaska is clean, orderly, and predictable. Textbooks tell us that during the last ice age, when sea levels dropped dramatically, a vast corridor known as the Bering Land Bridge connected Siberia to North America. This frozen highway, stretching hundreds of miles, allowed the first Palearctic peoples to migrate into Alaska roughly 13,000 to 15,000 years ago. From these early wanderers came the traditions archaeologists know well: the Palearctic toolkit of simple stone blades, the northern archaic cultures that followed, and eventually the rise of the Dorset and Thule peoples, whose descendants form the roots of many modern indigenous groups across the Arctic. In this conventional narrative, human movement into Alaska happened in careful waves, each defined by recognizable tools, housing styles, and survival techniques. The Dorset are known for their artistic carvings and isolation, the Thule for their advanced hunting technologies and whale-driven economies. Everything fits neatly into a timeline arranged by radiocarbon dates and sediment layers. It is a comforting structure, one that suggests we understand how humans expanded into the cold edges of the world. But beneath this polished version lie questions mainstream archaeology rarely addresses. Why do certain Alaskan sites appear to predate even the earliest accepted migration waves? Some stone tools pulled from deep layers of permafrost seem tens of thousands of years older than the established timeline allows. And why do a handful of artifacts, intricately shaped tools, unusual bone carvings, or architectural traces, display a level of sophistication unexpected for supposed early Arctic settlers? These discoveries don't merely stretch the accepted story, they threaten to snap it entirely. The rigid archaeological model insists on slow progression, simple to complex, primitive to advanced. Yet the data emerging from Alaska refuses to behave. Some cultures appear suddenly with technologies they were not expected to have. Others vanish without leaving transitional evidence behind. Certain migration theories crumble when confronted with sites whose dating defies logic. And every time researchers attempt to fold these anomalies into the standard timeline, another contradictory discovery emerges from the ice. It leads to an unsettling possibility, that Alaska may have been home to cultures far older, or far more advanced, than the official narrative admits. Cultures that came and went before the land bridge theory even begins. Cultures that didn't evolve slowly but arrived with knowledge that shouldn't have existed. As we move deeper into the evidence, one truth grows harder to ignore: the past buried in Alaska is not cooperating with the story we've been told. Across Alaska's windswept tundra, archaeologists have uncovered traces of cultures so unusual, so abruptly sophisticated, that they challenge every assumption about early human life in the Arctic. These discoveries reveal not primitive wanderers struggling against the cold, but communities with advanced craftsmanship, symbolic traditions, and far-reaching connections, cultures that seem to materialize out of nowhere, flourish briefly, and then vanish as mysteriously as they arrived. One of the most perplexing examples is the Arctic small tool tradition, a culture that appears suddenly in the archaeological record with highly refined craftsmanship, microlithic blades, expertly shaped end scrapers, and tools far more technologically advanced than what earlier Arctic groups were known to produce. Their artifacts show precision so delicate that some modern researchers struggle to replicate it using period-accurate methods. Yet these people left almost no transitional history behind. No clear ancestors. No gradual technological buildup. They simply arrived, fully formed. Even more enigmatic is the Denbigh flint complex, a branch of the Arctic small tool tradition renowned for its surgically sharp stonework. Denbigh tools display an extraordinary level of control, symmetry, and thin flaking that implies generations of accumulated knowledge. But where did that knowledge originate? There is no earlier culture in Alaska, or across the Bering Strait, with craftsmanship that even comes close. Some Denbigh artifacts resemble styles found thousands of miles away in northern Japan and Siberia, sparking theories of ancient maritime networks far older than mainstream archaeology is willing to entertain. Equally baffling are the burial rituals found across Alaska's interior. Certain sites contain human remains arranged in ceremonial poses, sometimes accompanied by objects made of non-local materials, jade from distant mountain ranges, obsidian transported from regions far outside known migration paths, and beads carved from shells native to southern coastlines. Such artifacts suggest trade networks or cultural exchanges spanning distances that should have been impossible for small Arctic groups. Yet the evidence is undeniable: someone was moving goods, knowledge, and ritual practices across vast, frozen territories long before official timelines allow. Then there are the ruins, ancient, half-buried structures emerging as the permafrost melts. Some resemble communal dwellings, others look like foundations or storage chambers unlike anything attributed to known Arctic cultures. Radiocarbon analysis hints at ages so extreme they border on forbidden, periods when Alaska was believed too hostile, too glaciated, too lifeless for human habitation. These structures shouldn't exist. And yet they do, solid proof that someone lived here during eras that defy established climatic models. The deeper researchers explore these tundra cultures, the stranger the story becomes. Patterns of architecture echo those of far-distant civilizations. Tool-making techniques suggest a lost lineage of master craftsmen. And the sudden disappearances, cultures blinking out as rapidly as they appeared, hint at catastrophic events or migrations erased by time. Each discovery adds tension to the mystery, tightening the thread between what archaeology claims to know and what the ice continues to reveal. Beneath Alaska's frozen skin lies the ghost of a forgotten world, one built by peoples whose identities, origins, and destinies remain hidden beneath the shifting tundra. A culture without a past or future. The Dorset people occupy one of the eeriest chapters in Arctic prehistory, a culture that appears without clear origins, thrives mysteriously in the polar darkness, and then vanishes so completely that even their descendants seem unsure of who they were. Unlike other ancient Arctic groups, the Dorset left behind artwork and carvings that depict faces with oversized eyes, elongated heads, and expressions that feel hauntingly out of place. Their imagery does not resemble the Thule, the Inuit, or any neighboring population. It feels isolated, alien, and deeply symbolic, as though the Dorset were trying to preserve something only they understood. Archaeologists note that Dorset technology was both advanced and anomalous. Their tools were crafted with precision rarely seen among early Arctic peoples, expertly honed burins, delicate microblades, and bone implements engineered for tasks requiring remarkable finesse. Some Dorset snowhouse foundations reveal sophisticated insulation techniques, while certain coastal structures hint at knowledge of tides and seasonal cycles beyond what mainstream theories attribute to them. Yet, for all their innovation, the Dorset remain historically disconnected: no clear ancestors, no cultural buildup, no gradual evolution of their techniques. They emerge fully formed. Then, almost without warning, they disappeared. Science offers tidy explanations: assimilation into incoming Thule populations, climate shifts that made survival difficult, or gradual resource loss. But these answers feel thin against the archaeological record. There is no widespread evidence of conflict. No mass graves. No clear merging of Dorset and Thule traditions. Instead, the Dorset vanish abruptly, leaving behind tools, carvings, and sanctuaries that look as though people walked away mid-ritual. It is disappearance without decay, an exit without explanation. Some researchers propose that forced migration pushed them into remote enclaves that remain undiscovered. Others suggest cultural extinction, a slow unraveling of identity triggered by environmental pressure. But a more unnerving possibility lingers, that the Dorset might not have been entirely local at all. Their sudden arrival, unique symbolism, and nonlinear technological development have led fringe theorists to wonder whether they belong to a much older lineage, one predating known Arctic migrations. If true, the Dorset may represent a remnant of a forgotten world carried into the north by events no longer preserved in human memory. The Dorset's spiritual life deepens the mystery. Their carved figures, often with wide, staring eyes, appear in ceremonial contexts, suggesting rituals focused on watching, guiding, or guarding. Some artifacts seem deliberately hidden, tucked into crevices or buried beneath stones as if meant to be found by future generations, or perhaps meant to remain concealed forever. Their mythic echoes within later Inuit oral traditions describe shadowy beings who lived separately, avoided contact, and possessed abilities that defied ordinary explanation. These stories, though softened by time, preserve a whisper of how profoundly different the Dorset may have been. Recent discoveries only heighten the enigma. At several high-latitude sites, Dorset objects have been uncovered in layers older than expected, suggesting their presence stretched further back than mainstream timelines allow. Some tools show wear patterns consistent with techniques found in distant Eurasian cultures, hinting at forgotten migrations or exchanges across immense frozen distances. Even more puzzling are Dorset footprints preserved in ancient coastal clay, prints belonging to individuals noticeably shorter, stockier, and differently proportioned than known Arctic groups. As melting permafrost reveals new Dorset sites, the unsettling pattern persists: advanced craftsmanship, abrupt absences, and a cultural identity disconnected from its surroundings. Whether they were an isolated human branch, migrants from forgotten homelands, or something more enigmatic, the Dorset continue to defy the boundaries of conventional archaeology. Their legacy lingers like a signal across the Arctic, a reminder that some cultures leave echoes than their physical remains, challenging us to reconsider humanity's pathways. In the oral traditions of the Inuit and Athabascan peoples, there exists a haunting memory of beings who roamed the Arctic long before the ancestors of today's northern tribes arrived. These beings are called the Tuniat, sometimes known as the First People, and they are described as towering figures of immense strength, capable of lifting boulders, carrying entire caribou on their backs, and building shelters so massive that ordinary humans could barely comprehend their scale. According to legend, the Tuniat were gentle yet secretive, avoiding direct contact and withdrawing into remote regions whenever newcomers approached. Their silence, their size, and their sudden disappearance seed one of the Arctic's most enduring mysteries. Who were these giants? While many scholars classify the Tuniat as mythic embellishments of the Dorset culture, the details in Inuit stories are too consistent, across vast distances and generations, to dismiss easily. Elders describe the giants' enormous footprints in frozen ground, their ability to survive brutal winters without fire, and their uncanny habit of emerging only at night. Some tales say the Tuniat possessed senses sharper than any animal, hearing whispers carried by the wind and detecting movement miles away. Others speak of their shelters, rooms so large that a single family could fit inside one corner, and doorways carved for people twice normal height. Surprisingly, archaeology provides eerie parallels. Across northern Alaska and the Canadian Arctic, researchers have uncovered unusually large dwelling depressions, foundations far bigger than typical Inuit or Thule homes. Some are circular structures with diameters so wide that they would have required engineering knowledge beyond that of small nomadic bands. In other areas, oversized stone tools and outsized harpoon heads have been discovered, objects far heavier than what an ordinary-sized human would efficiently use. These artifacts do not prove the existence of giants, but they complicate the neat alignment of myth and science. This tension, between cultural legend and material evidence, creates a psychological riddle. Are the stories distorted memories of a physically stronger yet human culture, like the Dorset? Or are they recollections of a truly unique group whose physical form and abilities were unlike anything seen in the Arctic since? Some researchers suggest that the Tuniat legends may preserve echoes of an ancient population with unusual body proportions, perhaps shorter but incredibly muscular, or adapted to extreme environmental pressures in ways modern humans are not. Others believe the myths hint at something more profound, a deep time memory of encounters with a population that predated all known migrations into the Arctic. If so, these stories might be fragments of history passed down through millennia, encoded in narrative form long before writing ever reached the far north. As climate change exposes new archaeological layers, the boundary between folklore and fact grows increasingly thin. With each uncovered structure, each oversized tool, each unexplained artifact, the question gains weight: did ancient giants truly walk the Arctic, leaving behind only myths and traces in the snow? Scattered across Alaska's frozen frontier are artifacts that defy every rule of archaeology, objects that seem to whisper of forgotten cultures, vanished technologies, and timelines far older than any human presence should allow. Each discovery is like a fracture in the accepted story, revealing glimpses of a past that science struggles, and sometimes refuses, to explain. Among the most confounding finds are strange metal fragments unearthed from deep permafrost layers, pieces composed of alloys not known to occur naturally, and certainly not attributed to early Arctic peoples. In remote dig sites, researchers have uncovered metallic objects with smoothed edges and geometric shaping, despite the fact that no evidence suggests ancient Alaskan cultures had consistent metalworking traditions. Whenever such finds are brought to light, mainstream explanations follow quickly: contamination, modern intrusion, mistaken categorization. Yet the layers where these objects are found often predate the last ice age, leaving the conventional answers trembling. Equally unsettling are tools that bear uncanny resemblance to technologies used thousands of miles away in Eurasia. Blade cores, pressure-flaked spear points, and bone engravings match styles from regions separated by oceans and climates, sparking uncomfortable questions about ancient contact, or shared origins far earlier than migration theory allows. Some archaeologists quietly admit the similarities are too precise to dismiss as coincidence, but official reports tend to smooth these edges with familiar rationalizations. Symbolic carvings only deepen the mystery. Found on bone, antler, and occasionally stone, these markings depict patterns and figures with no known parallels in native Alaskan traditions. Spirals woven into geometric grids, humanoid shapes with elongated limbs, and animal figures rendered in a style unlike any recorded Arctic art. Their meanings remain elusive, too intentional to be random, too foreign to fit existing cultural models. Even more troubling are objects so old they should not exist at all. Stone tools and carved fragments have surfaced in strata dated far beyond the accepted timeline of human arrival, some tens of thousands of years older than current migration theories tolerate. The default response is always the same: the layers were disturbed, the dating was flawed, the context misread. But the evidence refuses to settle neatly, and each dismissal feels increasingly forced. Adding to the suspense are the stories whispered among researchers, findings that were quietly removed from exhibits, dig sites abruptly closed, artifacts redirected to private archives where they vanish from public discussion. Competing narratives arise, overshadowing anomalies before they can challenge the broader framework. Taken together, these artifacts form a pattern that is hard to ignore. Alaska is home to objects that should not exist, evidence of cultures we cannot name, technologies we cannot trace, and histories we are not prepared to rewrite. For decades, the official archaeological timeline insisted that the Clovis people, arriving around 13,000 years ago, were the first to set foot in the Americas. But the deeper researchers dig into Alaska's frozen layers, the harder that claim becomes to defend. Across the Arctic, evidence continues to emerge of human, or human-like, presence thousands of years before the Clovis horizon, forcing a reckoning with the possibility that someone reached these northern lands long before modern humans were supposed to exist here. Some of the most controversial clues come from sites in Alaska where tools, burned bone fragments, and habitation traces appear in layers predating the last ice age. These findings suggest occupation during glacial periods when the region should have been nearly uninhabitable. Even more puzzling are stone flakes discovered near ancient riverbeds that resemble tool-making techniques seen in Ice Age Siberia, but with craftsmanship predating known Siberian cultures themselves. If authentic, these layers point to a population whose origins lie outside every accepted migration pathway. Comparisons extend far beyond Asia. Certain carving styles and structural features echo Scandinavian Mesolithic designs, while other artifacts bear striking similarities to early Pacific cultures, groups separated from Alaska by vast oceans. Orthodox archaeology dismisses these parallels as coincidence or convergent evolution, yet the precision of some matches challenges that explanation. When carvings, tools, and ritual motifs scattered across continents converge in design despite enormous distances, the question becomes harder to avoid: were ancient peoples connected in ways we no longer comprehend? Genetic research adds another layer of tension. While many indigenous groups trace clear ancestry to Siberian populations, scattered genetic anomalies point to lineages that do not fit neatly within known migrations. Some early DNA samples reveal markers that appear and vanish without continuity, as if representing branches of humanity that briefly existed in the region before disappearing. Other studies hint at an older substratum, a ghost population, suggesting that an unknown group contributed to Arctic genetics long before the ancestors of modern tribes arrived. Orthodox scholars attempt to reconcile these contradictions by expanding the known timeline of migrations or proposing short-lived experimental settlements that left little trace. But alternative theories propose far more radical possibilities. Some suggest that early seafarers, capable of navigating the Pacific long before conventional history acknowledges, may have reached Alaska's shores. Others consider the existence of isolated Ice Age refuges, pockets of land that remained habitable during glacial extremes, hiding cultures that thrived in secrecy for millennia. A few researchers even explore the idea of multiple waves of human-like species, parallel branches that overlapped before one lineage ultimately prevailed. The contrast between mainstream interpretations and alternative timelines forms a landscape of speculation grounded in real anomalies. Traditional models insist on linear migration, slow adaptation, and predictable cultural development. Yet Alaska's ancient evidence feels anything but linear. It suggests migrations that were forgotten, technologies that were lost, and populations that flickered in and out of existence long before recorded history. As the ice continues to thaw and more secrets surface, one possibility grows increasingly difficult to ignore: the Arctic may hold traces of a chapter in human, or pre-human, migration that has yet to be written. Along Alaska's far northern coastline, where storms roar like ancient gods and the sea ice fractures into endless mirrors, lies a stretch of land that few humans ever witness. It is here, beyond the reach of modern roads and far from the warmth of any settlement, that some of the Arctic's most perplexing ruins have been discovered. They do not appear in guidebooks. They rarely appear in academic journals. But to explorers, hunters, and satellite analysts who have glimpsed them, these formations feel like relics of a forgotten world. The first hints came from early coastal expeditions in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Explorers reported stumbling upon stone circles, perfectly rounded arrangements of heavy slabs buried in the tundra. These stones were too large for small nomadic groups to move easily and too precisely placed to be dismissed as natural. Some resembled ancient ritual sites, others seemed like foundations for dwellings far more elaborate than traditional Arctic architecture. Yet the strangest thing was their placement. Many sat on ridges or cliffs that would have been strategically ideal thousands of years ago, but completely impractical in more recent times. As the permafrost melts, new discoveries have emerged. Local hunters describe finding subterranean chambers, tunnels descending into ice-carved rooms lined with stones shaped so smoothly they feel impossible for early Arctic cultures to have crafted. Some chambers contain raised platforms resembling sleeping spaces, others hold alcoves that look like storage niches or ceremonial recesses. Most lie collapsed or flooded, but the craftsmanship visible through cracks and openings suggests a sophistication absent in known indigenous traditions. These aren't Thule stone traps or Dorset cooking pits. There's something else entirely. Then there are the megalith-like formations. In several remote peninsulas, massive stones stand upright in rows or arcs, weathered by millennia of ice and wind. Some align with solar angles around solstices, raising the unsettling possibility of ancient astronomical knowledge. Other formations create geometric shapes, triangles, rectangles, pathways, that seem intentionally carved into the land. Natural forces can sculpt remarkable patterns, but these structures bear an intelligence of placement that challenges simple geologic explanation. In recent years, satellite imagery has intensified the mystery. Analysts poring over high-resolution scans of Alaska's coast have identified geometric anomalies, grids, circular compounds, and linear foundations hidden beneath moss and ice. Some resemble ancient fortifications, others look like abandoned settlements with multiple interconnected buildings. These shapes appear in places so isolated that no documented human group ever lived there. Modern researchers who attempt to investigate often retreat due to storms, shifting ice, or logistical constraints, leaving the ruins half-studied and wholly unexplained. Scientific skepticism pushes back, of course. Geologists argue that freeze-thaw cycles can fracture rocks into uncanny shapes, archaeologists caution against interpreting every alignment as cultural. But even they struggle to explain why so many structures cluster in regions devoid of known habitation. Why stone circles appear at consistent sizes across hundreds of miles. Why subterranean chambers seem deliberately engineered. Why distinct geometric patterns emerge again and again in areas untouched by Inuit, Dorset, or Thule presence. Some theorists propose these ruins belong to a forgotten civilization erased by climate upheaval, perhaps a coastal culture swallowed by rising seas at the end of the last ice age. Others imagine survivors of an ancient catastrophe, forced to abandon their settlements and migrate inland, leaving only their stone foundations as silent memorials. A few more daring researchers whisper about cultures far older than accepted timelines, societies with knowledge of engineering and astronomy lost long before written history. Whatever the truth, the ruins remain. Weather-beaten stones stand like guardians of a story no one remembers. Chambers sleep beneath ice. Patterns linger on cliffs, visible only from the cold eye of a satellite. And each structure adds pressure to the growing question that mainstream archaeology is reluctant to face. If these aren't Inuit, Dorset, or Thule, then who built them? When confronted with Alaska's unexplained ruins, anomalous artifacts, and cultures that appear without warning, scholars and storytellers are forced into the same uneasy space, a landscape of theories where certainty grows thin and possibilities multiply. What, or who, shaped these Arctic mysteries? The answers range from conservative to cosmic, from grounded anthropology to the edge of myth. And none fit comfortably within the known timeline of human history. One idea gaining quiet traction is the existence of a prehistoric Arctic empire, an advanced, cold-adapted culture that flourished during the last ice age. Proponents argue that during glacial periods, vast regions of the Arctic were stable refuges rather than empty wastelands. If a population mastered life in this frozen world, they could have developed technologies, trade networks, and spiritual systems now lost beneath the advancing permafrost. The sudden appearance of the Dorset, Denbigh, and other enigmatic groups might be fragments of this older civilization, echoes of a society that shattered long before written memory. Another theory points toward lost cultures migrating from Siberia or Scandinavia, leaving behind only hints of their presence in Alaska. The similarities between certain Alaskan artifacts and distant Eurasian tool traditions push this hypothesis beyond coincidence. If early seafarers or reindeer-herding cultures crossed northern routes thousands of years earlier than assumed, they could have seeded temporary settlements, leaving behind tools, carvings, and structural ruins mistaken for local innovation. More daring still is the notion of an Ice Age city, a coastal hub built when sea levels were dramatically lower. If true, most of this civilization now lies underwater, destroyed by floods at the end of the Pleistocene. The fragments found on land, stone circles, megalithic formations, subterranean chambers, would be the inland outskirts of a larger world swallowed by rising seas. Then there is the hypothesis of early global seafarers, a theory supported by genetic anomalies and artifact parallels across vast distances. Could unknown navigators have traveled from the Pacific, Scandinavia, or even pre-Clovis South America, reaching Alaska long before modern models allow? If ancient maritime cultures possessed knowledge of currents, stars, and seasonal ice, their movements may have woven a forgotten web of Arctic contact. But some interpretations move beyond anthropology entirely. Indigenous cosmologies speak of cyclical destructions, worlds created and lost through fire, ice, or celestial upheaval. These traditions describe beings who lived before humans, cultures wiped out by floods or falling stars, and knowledge that vanished in catastrophic eras. In this lens, Alaska's ruins might not represent a single lost civilization, but the remnants of multiple cycles, societies undone by recurring natural resets. There are metaphysical theories too, civilizations aligned with cosmic events, migrations triggered by atmospheric anomalies, or cultures shaped by knowledge humanity has since forgotten. These ideas stray from scientific caution, yet they persist because the evidence refuses to settle neatly into any one explanation. Across all theories, one thread remains constant: the Arctic's past is far stranger and more intricate than the official narrative suggests. Whether these traces belong to Ice Age survivors, ancient migrants, global voyagers, or something entirely unknown, they beckon us with a whisper as cold as the northern wind. Not answers, just possibilities. And each possibility invites a deeper descent into the mysteries frozen beneath Alaska's timeless ice. Across Alaska's boundless frontier, where glaciers glow beneath twilight skies and the tundra stretches toward horizons untouched by time, the land itself feels like a keeper of forgotten truths. This is a place where silence is ancient, where mountains rise as though carved by vanished hands, and where the wind carries stories older than memory. For centuries, Alaska has remained a natural vault, a frozen archive preserving moments from eras we never knew existed. Beneath its ice lies evidence from worlds long erased, fragments of civilizations that surfaced briefly and disappeared before history ever learned their names. Today, as the planet warms and permafrost thaws at unprecedented speed, Alaska's ancient vault is beginning to open. Artifacts once locked in ice for tens of thousands of years now emerge unexpectedly, tools, carvings, structures, and bones revealing themselves centuries before scientists ever expected to find them. Entire landscapes are shifting, exposing ruins that challenge our assumptions about who lived here, how they survived, and what knowledge they carried. Each discovery feels like a message arriving from a forgotten age, urging us to look closer, question deeper, and reconsider the linear story we've been taught. Yet for every revelation, countless secrets remain hidden beneath layers of frozen earth. Alaska offers clues, but never the full picture. It shows us fragments without explanations, enigmas without beginnings or endings. The land guards its mysteries with the patience of ice, slow to reveal, quick to swallow, always reminding us how little we truly know. And perhaps that is what makes these discoveries so compelling, the sense that we stand at the threshold of a rediscovery, glimpsing echoes of the world as it once was. As new ruins surface, as strange artifacts defy classification, as legends align with physical evidence, a single truth becomes impossible to ignore: Alaska may force us to rewrite not just chapters of human history, but the entire book. Because whatever lies buried beneath this frozen ground was never meant to remain forgotten forever. And as the ice continues to melt, one question grows colder and sharper than the Arctic wind itself: what else waits in the deep silence of Alaska's ancient past, ready to change everything we think we know about who we are?